Yeah, okay, then we can start. So welcome everyone to my talk on voice assistants as a brand's digital front door. My name is Christoph Esslinger. I'm managing director and founder of VI Agency. VI Agency is very proud to be a sponsor of this year's event, the Chatbot Summit. We are a team of about 40 language and conversation experts, and we support European brands like, for example, Swisscom, Miele, RTL, in going the way towards the future of using voice assistants as an important interaction points of brands with their customers. And what I want to do today, I want to even look a little bit into the future and say, like, well, what will lead us really to the point where voice assistants become really a brand's digital front door? And from the experience we had with brands in going this way, going the way of establishing voice assistants as an important interaction point, I want to share 5 key learnings we have made in this journey. All right, with this, let me jump in. So I put here basically, is it really a look into the future, or are we to some degree already there yet? So when you look at people, can you actually see the right screen? Because on my streaming device, it's a little bit it looks a little bit late, but maybe that's just a problem. But I hope you can see the right screen. So I asked, is it really a look into the future? Are we not even to some degree there yet? So when we look at people interacting with their mobile phones, we often see people nowadays just like, talking their voice messages into their phones, sending voice messages to their friends. And why do they do that? Because it's so much more convenient to just quickly speak it into the phone than to, for example, type it in. And this convenience leap is what I think will also determine how we interact with all of our interfaces in the future. So whether you interact with an app or a website or a TV, often, let's say, a companion voice assistant will be there to take your first interaction, for example. And also, when we are in the middle of a conversation, the voice assistant might stand at the ready to just answer some clarifying questions, things like that. So my hypothesis here is that in the future, voice assistants in combination with a website, with an app, will just become a first interaction point for brands, for customers, and brands should basically look at, okay, how can a voice assistant really become a good first interaction point with my brand? And for this, I want to, as I said, I want to share 5 key learnings. So key learning number 1 is, don't teach your user how to speak, understand how your user speaks. What do I mean by that? Users know how to speak since their childhood, right? That's one of the first things we really learn in terms of interacting with our environment. And so if a user wants something and can just say it out loud, then there's this huge leap in convenience. And what I think is we are really experiencing in today's time a paradigm shift from I understand the interface to the interface understands me. So basically, when I have a visual interface, I have to think very carefully. Okay, well, how do I place certain buttons? How do I arrange the menu to allow the user in the most easy way to get as fast as possible to where she or he wants to go? But when I can just speak it out, it's much easier. I get directly there. So also when we're interacting with a visual interface, a companion voice assistant allows an easy deep link into the visual interface. And basically, how do we get there? What do I mean by understand how your user speaks? So the more we understand the context in which the user is, the easier it is for us to teach machines to actually understand the user in their natural way of speaking. Of course, one part of it is also how our assistant speaks. Also, by this, we create context, and we can sometimes or often influence the user actually what she or he feels natural in saying as a next point. But it should not be forced. If we have to frame too explicitly, do you want this or that? It just doesn't feel as natural, and then this great advantage of this interface a little bit gets lost. And also one point I wanted to make here: natural way of speaking doesn't always mean like we have a very lengthy conversation. In some instances, this can also mean just a short command. For example, if I'm interacting with my TV and I'm just looking for a certain show, I can just speak out this one command, and I just want to find this show, and that's fine. We don't have to start like a lengthy conversation there. But if I want to be consulted on what can I watch tonight or things like that, then we can start into a more complex conversation. So that's key learning number 1. Key learning number 2 is understand clearly how your brand wants to speak. So once you have understood the first conversation partner, your user, in their context, how they interact wherever they are, understand clearly how your brand wants to speak. So I think we have already heard this on one of the talks today, a similar sentence. Basically, when you're creating a voice assistant, and the voice assistant really is your first point of contact, then to some degree you are hiring a company representative to be your first point of contact for all of your customers in certain areas. So if you would be able to hire a human being to do that, you would choose that person very, very wisely. You would put a lot of effort in, and that's what you want to do when you think about, for example, creating your assistant's persona. And our credo is we want to help brands actually create a charismatic assistant persona. So when the user goes away from the conversation, says like, "Wow, that was a nice talk. That really felt well." And creating your assistant persona is, of course, about, well, how does your assistant, for example, react to an insult? Does he use humor? In which way does he use humor? Things like that. But even more subtle things. So, for example, how does your assistant deal with your customers' concerns? For example, concerning the data protection of using the interface that he is actually using. You can actually bring that into the conversation. How does your assistant respect your customers' wishes? So, for example, how personal does it get? You can decide from the very start. Well, I want to stay very formal. I don't want to go too much into a personal relationship. But for some brands, it might be very interesting to allow a more personal connection between the assistant and the user. But again, not all users might want that. So how do you distinguish between these users? And then how do you basically make your assistant interact with users that want to have a more personal conversation? And how does he interact with, or does the assistant interact with users who don't want to have such a personal conversation? That was key learning number 2. And then basically you have one conversation partner on the one side, and you have one conversation partner on the other side. User on the one side, and the assistant on the other side. And now you need to link them through conversation. And in conversation is about language and communication. So you need to use the power of language and communication to make that a great experience. In the end, good conversation is all about good cooperation between two partners. So for example, what does that mean? If I want my user to decide on the level of intimacy, how personal should it get? How do I skillfully place that in a conversation? So sometimes I can deduce from context, but if I cannot, why not just ask? Ask in a simple way. That's how conversation works. Ask before you guess. If I want my user to feel truly understood, I also need to know how can I continue a conversation and when don't I continue a conversation. So I should know when to be silent. Again, example about the TV that I had before. If I just want to do something, I want to switch the channel. I don't even have to say something. I can have, for example, I can just see it. I don't even need to. In that case, I don't even need to have a sound that confirms that I have changed it. I have changed it, and the person can see it. Sometimes, when a user really wants to interact, wants to be consulted, then I can be more. I can go more into interacting on a conversational way with my user. And in order to do that, in order to use all the subtleties of communication and language, we think it's important to work together in such process with language and communication experts. And as I said in the very beginning, that's actually how our team has formed. In the core of our team is really experts in conversation design, reaching from general linguistics to rhetorics, and we try to get all out of this special new interface by using our knowledge on language, on communication, on conversation, and has been until now has been really a great experience to work together with companies on creating these conversations between brands and users. Learning number 4. Technology is of course an important backbone of all of this. But what we have also realized is you should stay flexible about technology, because technology keeps evolving. We have leaps and bounds, getting better recognition here and there, and you wanna be able to basically also switch technology when it provides a high enough basically leap in convenience in user experience. So in your architectural setup, follow a modular setup in your technical solutions to allow for continuous improvements in technology. This means you should be able, for example, to switch out your text-to-speech engine that basically determines how the voice of your assistant sounds. If you find a solution that allows you to much better get closer to the voice that you want for your brand. Where it's I think more difficult is when you're switching on NLU, where you maybe have already invested quite a lot in training a certain NLU. But even there, the changing costs might be higher. But if the new technology provides such a big advantage, you should still be able to do that in terms of your technical setup. And at the same time, basically, technology is always at the back. The user cannot see it, and it should just feel the effects of it. He's understood better. But what the user, of course, sees very clearly is all the effects of how you use language. And that's why it's very important, and that's what we had in these previous learnings, to provide consistency in the way your assistant speaks. That's why it's very important early on in the process to define clearly your at least the core persona of your assistant. As I said before, how does she use wording in certain situations? How does she react to certain questions? At which point does she allow the user to jump in? Things like that. So all of this should be defined very clearly, and this will provide consistency even if you change technology in the end. The way your assistant speaks will build trust over time, and you will not have a big change in basically all of a sudden he's jumping from being very formal to very informal, things like that. That should not happen. And the last learning is that we have basically supported companies on both sides of this journey. So on the one side, we have helped companies build their own custom assistants, so really their own completely own solutions. And on the other hand, we have helped them being present on big platforms like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant. And of course, one learning here is when you build it yourself, you own and control the data. And these data are very, very valuable. Why? Because they are coming from a conversation. This goes back to this interface shift. The interface understands the user. This means the user really exactly says what they want. And knowing that, like it's not pre-filtered. The user cannot just select certain options, but he can really say what she wants. And that really is very valuable in knowing your user. And of course, this is also a sensitive topic. But for example, when you're a company that can build on a very high promise of data protection, your users might also be willing to share more of their data, or allow you to work with data in a certain way. And you can basically build on that trust and allow great things to happen by using that data while the user really agrees with it. And still, when you invest into your own solution, this does not preclude you from being present on big platforms like Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant as well. In the end, you can of course use the core design also on these other platforms. You can also be present there, but when you also have your own solution with the data there, you can do more things than what is present, what is possible when you don't have the control over the data. So as a summary slide, one more time, the 5 key learnings. Don't teach your user how to speak. Understand how your user speaks. Understand clearly how your brand wants to speak. Use the power of language and communication. Stay flexible about technology. And when you build it yourself, you own and control the data. With this, I want to say thank you very much for attending this talk. And if there's any questions, I'm checking actually my Agorify platform, but currently I don't see any yet. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in now. I'm still, of course, very happy to answer some questions now. If not, we will be here. We have a booth in the Chatbot Summit also tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow one of our team members, Mohammed Hassan, is going to be in also in a panel. You can also attend this panel, and we're looking forward also to see you there, of course. Yeah, so now I have here a question. What about if different people react differently on the persona? Would we have adaptive personas, few personas, or will it be the user problem? So in the end, I think your persona actually should be to some degree also adaptable to user needs, right? So when you think about a representative of your company, and she will be able to interact, for example, with a senior citizen that comes into a shop differently than with a young person. So there can still be some like unifying traits that this persona has, but of course she can say like, okay, well, if she's by nature friendly, she will be friendly in a different way with a very young person than with an old person. She should still basically react to the user, right? So the persona should have some traits that are, of course, at their core, at the core of the persona, but she should basically use these traits, also be adaptive in using these traits with different users. Thank you for that question. Here we have the chatbot's values and personality reflect the brands. I think yes, but you basically have to. Sometimes you really have to dive one more time into defining how do my brand's values really translate into conversation, because brands have invested a lot in how do their values translate in, for example, how they are presented on a visual interface, and you really need to now think, okay, how do I really talk? How does the assistant really talk? Of course, like some brands might also decide to just reach a certain group and might have like a specific set of values that is just adaptive to this specific user group. But in general, yes, I think there is a close connection between what a brand stands for and your virtual representative. So now the last question. I cannot see very well on the screen. Yes. Could you elaborate on drawbacks of using a platform like Alexa, Google Assistant? So one was, of course, like you're not that much in in control of the data. One other thing is, of course, you are building on top of an existing persona of this assistant, right? Of course, Alexa and Google Assistant have a persona by themselves, and you somehow have to, like, you will basically put your own assistant's persona on top of that persona, and to some degree, the user in most cases will still first talk to this persona Alexa. She will call on Alexa to do something, and to really you have to be very skillful to quickly get that back to your brand, to your brand's persona, your brand's assistant persona, and then you're basically you're in your universe, right? You're not anymore in the universe of only Alexa. That's, I think, one drawback that you might face. Any other questions? All right. If not, then thank you very much for attending. It was a pleasure giving this talk today. Thanks again, Sydney and Angus for organizing this great event. And as I said, if you like to get to know more about us, come to our booth. You can schedule meetings also tomorrow, and we'll be happy to be in touch with you.